The second point here, I want us to look at Noah. Noah's walk with God. That's my second point. Noah's walk with God. So we are told in Genesis chapter 6 and verse 9 that Noah was a righteous man. Genesis 6:9. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked with God. Do you see? There is something that he has learned now, which Adam and Eve needed to have known after the fall, is that, and which they did know after the fall, that after the fall, to walk with God, you have to raise an altar. So we are told that he walked with God. And I'm sure that as he walked with God, God must have taught him how to get his favor and his fellowship. So he tells Noah to build an ark. They go into there 40 days and 40 nights, and there is a flood. Then the flood recedes, and Noah and the animals and his children come out of the altar. So after the flood, as soon as Noah left the ark, he needed to hear from God. He has been in the ark for 40 days and 40 nights, and now he needs to reach out to God. He needs to fellowship with God. He needs to know what he needs to do next. So what does he do? In Genesis chapter 8, and I'm going to read from verses 18 to 20. And I think I told you already last week that I love to hear papers making noise. Okay? Tells us that we are opening the Word of God, the Word of life. Okay? So Genesis chapter 8, and I'm going to read from verse 18. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives. Can you imagine yourself? Do you imagine that Noah was happy? No. He was not happy. No friends, people that he knew had died. He was alone with his immediate family. So when he came out of this ark, you can imagine the state of his soul, the state of his heart. He needed to hear from God. Verse 18. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, and all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground, and all the birds and everything that moves on the earth came out of the ark, one kind after another. What does Noah do? The very first thing that he does in verse 20. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. He knew the only way I can get to God is by raising an altar. That is the only way he has allowed us to communicate with him. And what is God's response to this sacrifice on the altar? The Lord smelt the pleasing aroma. A sacrifice on an altar is a pleasing aroma to God. And that is why when we come to him through Jesus Christ, he says we are the aroma. We are the aroma of Christ. When he sees us, he smells what he smelled when Christ was on the cross of Calvary. So it is the aroma. He smelt it. And then he said in his heart, God was so pleased. And now favor was just flowing out. He said, never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. When Noah raised that altar, it evoked a covenant from God. It evoked a promise from God. It evoked a vow from God. So whenever an altar is raised, we are going to see today that it invokes God to tell us something. It releases the voice of God for our situation. Okay? So, God covenants with his children at altars. That is when he gives us the blueprint. This is what I'm going to do for you at the altar. And remember, for you and I, our altar was raised through the cross of Jesus Christ and the sacrifice that was put on it. Outside that, God cannot communicate with man. Because of the sin that we are born with, he cannot communicate with us outside an altar.